And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Michael Lahanas Calderon, substituting for, if anybody can substitute for Heather Lofthouse. Michael, I'm not sure anybody can. But there is a lot to talk about. A lot is going on.
No shortage of stuff to talk about. And I'll briefly mention our colleague Heather actually is off at the premiere of a new film featuring you and your last class.
The last class.
And we'll talk about that more at the end of the podcast, but she is well, and we miss her. But lots to get into for this week.
So what are the major topics?
Well, I think that we're going to have to get into what is happening in Los Angeles and in cities around the country this week, why it's happening, and as always, what is Trump trying to cover up based on his overreaction to these ongoing crises, or crises with air quotes, right?
Well, it is with air quotes. I mean, that's exactly right. There is no crisis here. Donald Trump, in his quest to run America, to become America's dictator-in-chief, and I think this is really the underlying issue here, has launched a police state, Michael.
We're not heading towards it.
Well, whether we're heading toward it or we're already there is a matter of very subtle interpretation.
Sure.
But when you have a U.S. senator who simply asking a question at a press
Senator
conference,
Alex Padilla of California, right?
Yes, and is handcuffed and is treated as if he is a, sort of a threat.
Mm-hmm.
When you have, as occurred a month and a half ago, a judge who was arrested, when you have the executive branch of the United States government basically going out and in the streets and at places of work, basically abducting people at universities, abducting people, not giving them rights, not giving them due process, sending some of them to a prison in another country. Well, you have the makings of what may be a police state. That's what maybe indeed Trump wants to create. And today, there will be demonstrations around America, the No King's Day demonstrations.
That's right.
Designed to give people an opportunity to say, we don't want a police state. We don't want a king. We don't want a monarchy. 250 years ago, we decided and we created an army exactly to avoid what is happening right now this week.
And we have a special guest today as well, later on in the podcast, Ezra Levin, the co-executive director and co-founder of Indivisible, one of the main organizations behind the protests today. So we'll talk about that more later, for sure.
Yeah, and the key, the problem, I think, the dilemma, I should say, confronting many of us today as we protest, and as many of us have protested this week, is how not to fall into the Trump trap. And the Trump trap is protesters are insurrectionists.
It's a rebellion. It's an insurrection. It's, whatever the biggest possible threat they can conjure, right?
And Michael, the irony, I mean, here is the man who actually launched an insurrection against the United States.
Let alone, let's not even consider the pardons flying around for January 6th.
You don't even have to go that far. So the insurrectionist in chief is accusing people who don't like his tyranny of being insurrectionists. This is the classic play. And I think it is created in part, or the timing has a lot to do with the fact that he couldn't get anywhere on his tariffs. China said no. The China deal is completely off the table. He was humiliated by Elon Musk. He's been humiliated even by Republicans in the Senate who say to him, "Your big, bad, ugly, huge, beautiful you call bill. No, we're not going to go along with this because it's awful in so many ways." So when he faces that kind of humiliation, what does he do?
Well, he
says,
"Okay,
now is time to show how powerful I really am."
Big, strong man.
Big, strong man. Strong man.
Yeah, more like big, weak man. One could argue based on all of these humiliations
he's
that he's
a coward.
experienced.
A coward. That is really the core. He is a very weak man. He's a coward, and he can't bear the possibility that he is being told no.
Well, to go back to a second just to the militarization of the response to these protests, I just want to ask you, because you went to Yale Law. You're a lawyer. You have a pocket constitution on our table.
I do. I bring my constitution. I bring this everywhere. Michael, where is your constitution?
It's on my phone as a digital native.
Well,
but I want to ask,
to
is any of this legal? I mean, to what degree are the actions that Trump has taken this? I know that there's stuff moving through the courts. There was a temporary pause that was then appealed as to his National Guard mobilization and federalization being legal. I mean, for average people, I feel like it's happened so quickly, and it's been hard to really discern, is this, I mean, obviously this isn't normal, but to what degree is this not normal?
Well, the speed is a part of the dictatorial, fascist, authoritarian playbook. Move very, very fast. Destroy democratic institutions if you can before people respond. Mm-hmm. That's why today's responses are so important. But also, you want to create emergencies. You want to create crises. You want to, and I'm talking about an authoritarian, wants to create the impression in the public's mind that an emergency is brewing and he has to do what he is doing.
An emergency provides a legal justification for the actions too, right?
It provides both a legal justification, that is, there are statutes, laws on the books that say if we are in an emergency, the normal constitutional provisions can be suspended. But they are usually in wartime. In fact, only in wartime. So not
typically when you're doing a raid at a Home Depot. That isn't how these things normally start, right?
A Home Depot is not a step along the emergency, usually. But you also, as an authoritarian, as a dictator wannabe, a monarch wannabe, you want to stage these gigantic parades. You want to have a military that is going out into the country. You want to create enough of a feeling among enough of your followers and many people who are too confused about what reality is, that this is necessary. And if we don't do this, all hell is going to break loose. This is law and order cubed, squared, on steroids. And this is what Trump wants. And a lot of the people around him want this as well, Michael. We're not
like Stephen Miller.
Well, Stephen Miller and the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security. And, you have these people who are appointed on the basis of loyalty to Trump, more loyalty to Trump than loyalty to the United States. And we are seeing now the consequences.
So, as somebody who didn't live through the 60s, I do have to ask. I know.
Michael, you are so young. How can you be so young? There is 50 years, a half century.
Wow, I'm getting older every day, don't worry.
Well, but I am too, believe me.
I want to pose this question for our slightly younger viewers in any case. Yeah. I mean, that was a period of mass mobilization of people, and is this worse? Is this better?
You're talking about 1968.
I'm talking about 1968.
Well, 1968, I was 22. Bill Clinton was 22. Donald Trump, George W. Bush, we were all 22. We didn't know each other at that time. Cher was 22. I mean, you have the baby boomers, and we shared the experience in 1968 of the Vietnam War and of also Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated and Robert F. Kennedy being assassinated and the cities exploding in riots because of the King assassination and subsequent events connected to all of that, the National Guard being called out. And it did feel as if the country was coming apart, much more than it does now. Actually, I mean, you could make a case that things are much worse now, but I'll tell you, having lived through both 1968 and today, I can tell you 1968 felt much more as if this country was gone, was actually being eradicated. And then, I participated. I tried to stay clean for Gene. I was one of the people who went out for Gene McCarthy and tried to get him elected president because he was the anti-war candidate. Bobby Kennedy came in, was murdered. And then at the end of this horrible year, what happens? Richard Nixon, of all people, Richard Nixon is elected president. So, Michael, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go study abroad in September, October, I left. I thought the United States was done for. I tell young people, it's been bad before, it looks bad now, but we are incredibly resilient. We will get through this, but we have to be careful.
What I keep coming back to is how it feels like Trump is he's on a revenge tour in general, but it almost feels like he's trying to restart the chaos at the end of his first term. 2020 is back. And that's what Donald Trump wants, because it was a moment of national turmoil in some ways, mass protests, and he had an opportunity to act as a strongman. I mean, just as an example, I remember in 2020 being shocked when there were masked federal agents from agencies I'd never heard of picking up protesters in unmarked vans. I mean, that was a moment of incredible executive overreach.
I think Donald Trump loves chaos. He loves to be in the center of chaos. He loves to stir things up to the point where he can emerge as the strongman. He is, I think, a malignant narcissist, a truly, I'm struggling for the word, but a somebody who's very dangerous because he also has charisma. He also understands marketing. He's a con man in the worst sense of the term. And I believe that he naturally, instinctively, he did it in the first term, he's now doing it again, wants to rile people up because that's how he maintains and entrenches his power. That's how he looks strong, getting people angry at each other. But you see, he's also backed by the American super wealthy, the oligarchy.
Big surprise.
Well, but this is the old playbook. This is what happened in Germany in the 30s. It happened in Italy. It's happened elsewhere around the world. You create this alliance. If you're an authoritarian, you want to create this alliance between the vast number of working class people who think that order has to be restored, that everything is getting out of control, that there is a crisis, and the super rich who are looking to the authoritarian as a way of basically siphoning off all of the benefits from the income and wealth of the nation.
From the rest of us, you might say.
Well, that's what's happening. I mean, look at the bill that is now in front of Congress.
Beautiful,
the big, ugly,
bummer,
terribly awful bill. I mean, that bill provides a huge...
Well, the numbers I saw, it was 81% of the benefits from the big, beautiful bill over the 10-year period that the Congressional Budget Office just scored go to the top 1/10 of Americans.
81% to the top 1/10. Now, if you're an authoritarian and you are backed by these super wealthy, you want to be able to say to them, not in these words, but you want to be able to reassure them, don't worry, nobody will find out because I'll create such chaos over here in the streets. We'll create this war, this faux pretend craziness, and nobody's going to be talking about you getting 81% you top 1/10.
And as a side benefit, a lot of these oligarchs and corporations are also benefiting from the crackdown. I mean, private prison companies are getting new detainment centers built. You've got all kinds of other private security and defense contractors.
In fact, look at the budget. The budget that is submitted, the budget that the Republicans are considering now, the only big increases in the budget are defense and border security and all of these agencies that are agencies of basically lethal force. This is something else that an authoritarian wants to do. But are we talking about it? No, we're all talking about what's happening on the streets or not happening on the streets or,
Well, and even what is happening or what is set to happen, we have some numbers for what that's going to cost, right? There is a cost to putting National Guardsmen in the streets. There's a cost to even deploying or preparing to deploy Marines.
There's a cost to today's parade.
Exactly.
I mean, $45 million. Michael, spent just on a parade that is not really to celebrate the U.S. Army. I mean, that's the pretense. But Trump wants a parade. Everybody
and don't
knows.
even get me started on the cost it's going to take to repair the streets after you roll tanks over them.
Don't get me started either.
How many potholes do you think there are going to be in D.C. after that?
And, it's Trump's birthday today. and he knows it is, and he knows you know, and I know, and everybody else knows, and he wants a big authoritarian-like parade. This is exactly the playbook. It's not that difficult to see. It shouldn't be that difficult to see.
And we don't have to, hand wave it away. I feel like, there is a history of military parades in this country, but they don't look like this, and they certainly don't happen on the president's birthday.
And they happen, maybe, if they happen at all, they happen after major victories, after a war. I mean, at the end of World War I, at the end of World War II, there were military parades, but they are not the kind of thing that we do in this country. In fact, George Washington objected to big shows and big displays of military might. He himself didn't like the notion that some people regarded him as a monarch. He kept on rejecting the notion that a president should be a monarch or should be revered as a monarch.
And did you see the speech that he gave at Fort Bragg earlier this week?
Not George Washington.
Not George Washington, sorry. The other one. Donald Trump.
Yes.
And for those of you who didn't see, he gave a speech in which there were pre-vetted members of the military behind him. I think there were some very curious requests there, including no fat soldiers. That was one. And then also, if you have a different political affiliation than the president, you are welcome to not attend.
But I don't remember a time, even during that awful year of 1968, when a president, and then it was Lyndon Johnson, but even during Richard Nixon's time, I don't remember a president giving a speech to military, to our active troops, and being cheered.
And booing the political opposition and encouraging that kind of behavior and heckling from the troops. And I mean, it was just a Trump rally. It was a Trump rally at a military installation.
Yes, but it's terribly dangerous in a democracy to have a rally that is partisan, that is a military rally by active military troops. And he knows that.
Yeah.
And everybody else knows it. And, the big failure, the real true cowards behind all of this are Republicans in Congress who should be saying, no, this is outrageous. This violates every canon of the Constitution and conservatism. If we're really conservatives, we want to conserve this democracy. We want to conserve what's best about the democracy. I was starting to tell you,
Michael,
please,
yes.
On my pocket Constitution.
You
got me a little bit off. But Amendment 10, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, that is to the federal government, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. In other words, behind the Constitution is this notion that states have the final say. The people have the final say. For a president to direct the National Guard, to militarize the National Guard of a state without the state wanting it, with a governor saying no, with mayors saying no, we don't want this. Mm-hmm. It's not unheard of. It happened during the days of Southern segregation, but that was the federal government coming in and protecting the rights of Black people. This is very different. This is the federal government coming in and saying, what? You cannot protest what we are doing in terms of raids.
And I think it was notable, too, that this may not have been in the version of the clip that many people saw of Senator Padilla being dragged off by Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary's security. But right before that, she was talking about how she wanted to liberate, essentially the state of California from the burdensome leadership of the governor and the mayor. And it's kind of amazing that sort of rhetoric is just normalized.
I think the people around Donald Trump, including obviously Donald Trump, really view California and other so-called democratic states as the enemy, as the other side. And, the enemy, that is the enemy within, almost with as much vehemence, maybe more, than they look at foreign powers. And it's frightening in a way. That is, the United States has been through a civil war. We revived. We came back together. It was very painful. It didn't happen over one generation. But there are forces in this country that would like us to separate. But the irony is that a place like California, which is just, it's a huge economy. It's now surpassed Japan. It's now the fourth largest economy in the
massive.
world. I mean, California. And California, by the way, sends in many more taxes to the federal government.
I think it's like 80 billion or something.
That it gets back in services. Yeah. So California is subsidizing much of the rest of the country. To pick on California and to say we're sending the federal guard, that you are the enemy, is the height of ignorance.
Well, and they're also trying to take out the biggest players that might oppose them first. I mean, that's why you go after Harvard. That's why you go after California, because if you can take out California, who else could stand up?
And if you can take out Harvard, and if you can take out China.
But that hasn't happened yet, right? As
No.
we were saying earlier, I mean, maybe we could talk about that a little bit more. On the economy, I mean, Trump, he's stymied in his legislative efforts. On the economy, on tariffs, he's not really getting anywhere. The great negotiator, the deal maker, is not making deals. So, I mean, what has he actually done to improve the lives of average Americans?
Well, that's exactly the point. And what he will say, his narrative, is that I have kept the forces of evil, the socialists, the Mexicans who want to come here, all at bay, when in fact he's done nothing. In fact, he's worsened the country in countless ways. He's instilled fear in so many people. I think the big picture that we keep on coming back to is the same big picture, and that you have Donald Trump trying to distract people from the fact that he is making many people's lives worse. He's certainly not making anybody's lives better. He was elected because prices were going up. His tariffs, the big so-called big, beautiful, ugly bill, everything else he is doing, he is actually going to make people, or is in the process of making people worse off. So what does he do? He creates this gigantic distraction.
And I also want to add, I mean, this was sort of breaking big news from yesterday and Thursday. On foreign policy, I remember Trump during the campaign saying there'd be no more wars.
No more wars.
Peace deals on day one. And
after Ukraine, I'll do it right away. Yeah. And everything is going to be wonderful. And I will clean up and Gaza and Israel, and everything is going to be great.
And now?
Just the opposite. War is breaking out. I mean, the problem of the Ukraine-Russia war, and the problem is Russian aggression, is worse than it was before. And now we have Israel bombing Iran, and a regional war emerging. Because remember, Hezbollah and all of the puppets of Iran are throughout the entire region. And so they are going to rise up. Israel is going to become even more isolated than it was. The United States, what is the United States going to do? It is probably going to be forced to support Israel in a major way. So here again, Michael, what we see is every fissure, every crack, every problem that you could potentially exploit to create larger problems is being done.
And that positions him, I don't want to say well, because that's not how I feel, but it positions him every day a little bit more to take more authoritarian moves in power, right?
Exactly. And that's the underlying trend. He becomes more and more of a dictator. He uses more and more emergency powers because he creates emergencies. There was not an emergency at the border before. In fact, Biden was actually deporting more people than before. The record shows that fewer people were being picked up.
And not only that, I think it's important to note, I mean, in terms of building the emergency and the crisis in the narrative for Trump, that he personally blocked through pressure, publicly and otherwise, bipartisan immigration legislation early last year, which, if I'm remembering correctly, was actually a bill that many Democrats were criticized for supporting because it was effectively a Republican bill.
It was a Republican bill. It was a Republican bill to deal with the so-called crisis at the border, which was already becoming less and less of a crisis. And Trump said, he told the Republicans in Congress, I don't want that bill because that will solve the problems and will look like it will solve the problems. And I want a problem. I want a crisis. I am Mr. Crisis.
So let's zoom out again just for a second. We've covered a lot of ground. We're in a situation now that I would say, in my far less limited experience than you, feels quite dangerous. And I know that this week we're going to see, or rather today, I mean, who knows, maybe we'll see more protests this week. Today we have a lot of people going out on the streets, and we want them to be out there protesting peacefully. But, and we'll get to this in a little bit with our special guest, but I'm wondering, what do you think about the No King's Day protests? Like, what would you recommend to folks?
I think it's very important. Number one, people need to know. You need to know. You don't need a permit to protest in most places. So don't fall for that. You have First Amendment rights. Number two, you have the right to photograph anything that is in plain view. So if you see anything in terms of people being manhandled, people handled, badly treated by officials, particularly by officials like National Guardsmen, take pictures, take videos. Number three, if you are stopped by the police, ask if you are free to go. If yes, just calmly walk away. There is no reason that the police have to detain you, and particularly if they say you are free to walk away, walk away. And finally, if arrested, ask for a lawyer immediately. Don't sign or agree to anything, without a lawyer.
And that's courtesy of the ACLU.
This is all from the ACLU, but I want to add a number 5, which is be peaceful. Although this is the 250th anniversary of the shot heard around the world and technically the beginning of the U.S. Army, the Continental Army, it is not and should not be the beginning of another American Revolution. We must be peaceful. We can't play into Trump's hands. He would like nothing better than violence to justify what he is doing, to justify his amassing more and more power and creating an emergency. So peaceful, nonviolent disobedience, peaceful, nonviolent protest is your right, and it's what we must do.
And we'll be sure to include some links to more information and resources on this from the ACLU and others. But I think that it might be good to hear it from someone who is involved very directly in these protests, Ezra Levin, who I mentioned earlier, who's our guest today. And we are so excited to have with us today a very special guest, the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible. And he, along with Leah Greenberg, founded the organization in the first Trump term. And they are one of the main organizations behind the No Kings protests happening today. So, Ezra, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for talking.
Ezra, I want to add my thanks as well, and thanks to you and Leah for doing what you are doing. But that's really what I want to stress today. What do you hope is going to come out of all of this? In other words, if you had to sketch for us today's most wonderful outcome, what would you say it would be?
There are two things, narrative and action. So the narrative that we want to come out of this day is one of contrast. Donald Trump is spending $100 million of your money, my money, all taxpayer dollars to fund this ridiculous military birthday parade for himself, something he's wanted to do for quite some time. And finally, the gloves are off and he's doing what he wants. We know from the scholars of authoritarianism that this is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. He is trying to project strength. He is trying to make everybody believe that he is all powerful. And that's really dangerous for democracy. We don't want that narrative taking hold. So one point of this is the contrast, the narrative that people are exercising their First Amendment rights and they're doing it powerfully, peacefully. They're having a lot of fun. It is joyful. It's ebullient. It feels good to be out there protecting your rights. That's one measure of success. But what we know is any given day of protest, that's a tactic, Bob. That's a tactic. It is not a strategy. It does not accomplish our goal. It needs to fit into an overarching strategy that safeguards our democracy. So real success from today isn't just that people have a good time and we make Donald Trump look like the weak, lame duck, unpopular president that he is. It also means funneling people directly into persistent local organizing, whether they're joining a local indivisible group, their local union, their local working families party, whatever it is. We need people talking to each other where they are to organize in protection of our democracy. So I think the real success of this is not just going to be measured in today's events. It's going to be measured in what comes after.
And so I had a question actually in terms of tips for today. Is there any, I mean, there's so many conversations about what is the right way to protest. And I don't think that's the question I'll pose to you, but for somebody who's, maybe not typically a protester, or maybe this is their first protest.
Somebody who's 28 years old.
Yeah, somebody who's never been outside. What would you suggest?
First of all, welcome. We need you. There were about 3.5 million people out on April 5th, which was the single largest day of protest that we'd seen in years. That was at 1,300 events. There are going to be more than 2,000 events today. So there are going to be millions of more people. You're in good company. And anytime we do something new, it's reasonable to get nervous. Like, you don't know exactly what you're going to come up against. What do you need to prepare? That's okay. Let me say, these are welcoming events. We see people with their moms and grandmas, their dogs and their kids. It's mostly a good time. But if you've got butterflies, here's what I would recommend. Go to nokings.org. You'll see some training resources. There are trainings for marshals who are volunteering at these events to help keep the crowd safe and engaged. There are trainings for public safety and for de-escalation. Hopefully that gives you just a few tools, a few things at the front of mind. In case you have any questions, you've got some training going in there. But fundamentally, what you are doing right now is exercising your First Amendment rights. That's it. It's peaceful protest. It's the most American thing since apple pie. You shouldn't be afraid to do it. And anybody who is making you afraid to do it, that's on them. You've got good company and we've got strength in numbers.
Ezra, you keep on talking about joyful and narrative and positive energy and also obviously nonviolence. But let me just say and underscore something that you also implied. Trump wants confrontation. Trump wants to demonstrate to the country that all of these people who are protesting are actually insurgents. They're violent. Now, you're out there, or we are out there this afternoon, or wherever, late this morning. And they're going to be, let's assume, in our city. There are going to be police. There will be National Guard, maybe. There may be even conceivably a few Marines. There are going to be some hecklers who are going to be calling us names. Now, what do you advise in light of all of this provocation? Do you just continue to be joyful and jump around and playful and pretend that the provocateurs are not there? Or what do you do? What's the message in the light of the provocation?
Yeah. Look, I'd first start with strategically, you should not play into their hands. As you mentioned, Trump would like nothing more than the excuse to crack down on protest. That is what he fears. He fears collective, peaceful people action. That is what he's worried about, because he understands his agenda is so deeply unpopular that if the people organize and push back against it, he might not get what he wants. So understand that is what we are up against right now. Now, practically speaking, if you find yourself at one of these protests where there are folks instigating, we have a handy little mnemonic, and it's part of the training on de-escalation. So I would encourage folks to go check that out again at nokings.org. You can see it, but it's A, B, C, D. A, be aware of your surroundings. Just understand where you are, what's around you, who are the instigators if they're out there. Keep an eye out. That's just healthy to do, regardless of where you are, whether it's a No King State protest or any public event. B, breathe. Take a breath. Don't immediately respond in some way. You should breathe. It's okay. You don't have to respond immediately. C, consider whether you're going to engage or not. That is an active choice that you should make. Do not just viscerally respond. Consider, does this make sense? And D, de-escalate. You should be de-escalating. You're not looking to win some fight. You're looking to bring down the temperature. And there are a number of practical ways you can work in a crowd to de-escalate, to bring down the temperature. Again, this is not our first rodeo. We had 1,300 events all across the world on April 5th. Not a single reported incident of violence or property destruction. That is what we're going for again, while we understand exactly what you said, Bob. That's not what Trump wants. Trump likes nothing more than chaos. This is why he is escalating this week. This is why he is militarizing LA. We believe this is all a rehearsal. This isn't just about LA. This isn't just about immigrants. He's asking for $150 billion for ICE in this current reconciliation package because he wants to do to the rest of the country what he's doing to LA right now. Let's not give him that excuse.
Ezra, if I may, just help us understand how the ideal today, in terms of protests, demonstrations, joy, whatever you want to call it, relates to the hard work of politics.
Yeah. Oh, great question.
Connect it for us.
So now we're asking, what is the strategy? Why show up and protest? What on earth can that actually accomplish? Does it actually change anything? And here I take my guidance from I'm not an academic. I take my directions here and the learnings from the experts in authoritarianism. What has worked in other democratic countries that have fallen into authoritarianism? How have the pro-democracy actors there successfully pushed back? These are folks like Maria Stephan, Erica Chenoweth, Timothy Snyder, Heather Cox Richardson. Name your favorite. You'll hear the same lesson, which is the thing that works in a moment of autocratic breakthrough, which is how they describe this, is broad-based, peaceful people power demonstrating in the streets. Now, why does it work? We're not sending a message just to Trump. He's almost the least important figure in all of this. The danger we are facing right now is Trump is systematically targeting sources of power outside of the White House. He's attacking media institutions, law firms, universities, businesses, nonprofits. And the purpose of that is to cow them into submission. He wants them to not stand up. Now, there is a Paul Weiss law firm and a Columbia University and Facebook and Washington Post. We know all of the institutions that are bowing to this would-be monarch now. But there are also a lot of other law firms, businesses, universities, and other institutions that are trying to decide, which way do I go? Should I bow to this would-be king? And there's a rational decision to make here. If you think that Trump is indeed all-powerful, if you think this political moment is indeed forever, it makes sense that you don't want to be targeted. There is a real threat out there. What the job of all of us is in this moment is to send a very clear message to leaders and institutions that this period is temporary. This is not forever. Trump is an unpopular lame duck president. This period of autocratic breakthrough is going to be replaced by a period of accountability. And you, university, law firm, business, media institution, you're going to have to contend with what you do in this moment. And that should factor into your rational, self-preservationist political analysis right now. We are sending a clear message that, in fact, democracy is going to reassert itself. And what you do in this moment is going to define how you're perceived after this moment passes. That's the strategic logic of showing up right now. Is it going to suddenly fix everything? Are we suddenly going to wake up on Sunday and democracy is saved? We don't have to worry about it? Absolutely not. But that message is important. And it's not me just saying that. This is what we learned from other fights against authoritarians around the world.
But other places around the world don't have the same kind of media, particularly social media, that we do. They're gaining it, unfortunately. But what do we do to break through the media and not be violent? How does the media, or would we like the media, to report nonviolent resistance, nonviolent, peaceful protest? How do we want the headlines to read, and how do we even get headlines?
Oh, gosh, it's a hard question, Bob. And when you talk about the media, what are we talking about? Because we have the legacy media institutions, whether that's CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or Washington Post or New York Times. But then we have this burgeoning field of emerging new media. I mean, this includes this podcast would be an example of that. It's important for us to talk to everybody to get our message out. Unfortunately, we can't just rely on a good New York Times headline to carry the story anymore. Maybe that was true a couple decades ago. It's not true now.
Well, it was interesting when the LA resistance to the raids in Los Angeles began. Yeah. The New York Times and other media, they had big photographs of cars burning. Now, that was the image in the public's mind. That was the most powerful image that fed right into Trump's particular narrative. There were very few images, pictures of peaceful, nonviolent people standing around singing or whatever have you. That's what I want to push you toward. We may have new media, but even on the new media, how do we get the new media to actually depict what is happening in terms of a broad-based, civil, peaceful response to Donald Trump and to his anti-democracy movement?
Look, just because we're peaceful doesn't mean we have to be uninteresting. I don't want to equate those two things. I think we should be interesting. I think we should use laughter and humor. I actually think that's quite effective. You want something that causes people to say, that's interesting. I want to click at that. I want to read that. I want to watch that. I think that's important. I saw the line dancing in LA. I thought that was great. That's a good example of a demonstration of joyful opposition to authoritarian overreach. I think humor and ridicule is very powerful in a moment like this. Trump would love to be feared, would like nothing more than to be feared. He wants to be seen as, he's a jerk. Yeah, he's a bully, but he's powerful. He can't stand to be a clown. He can't stand to be ridiculed. He can't stand to be seen as weak. We should lean into that. We absolutely should lean into that. But I look at the coverage of Hands Off and I saw two worlds. If you turned on the corporate media, you saw very little coverage of protest or no coverage at all. We got to recognize that it's not enough to push or hope for the existing media institutions to just cover things the way we're going to need them to be covered. We've got to start investing in these other operations. And some of that is us actively promoting and lending them our eyeballs and our eardrums. But we should be hard on ourselves tactically. We should be thinking of what is the message that we want to get across and how can we make it so interesting that it's irresistible for folks to actually cover.
I assume you're encouraging people to share their No King's Day experiences on social media themselves too, right? To democratize that message getting out of peaceful, joyful, but obviously important protest.
One of the quote unquote media institutions we have that nobody thinks about is freaking word of mouth. How do people learn about things happening? They learn from their neighbors or their friends or their family members who post from their own social media. That's not an MSNBC. That's not a New York Times. But a lot of people are increasingly skeptical of those legacy institutions or big, faraway institutions. We all are Americans trying to uphold democracy in this moment. We all have a role to play in letting folks know what reality is, because if we don't have a shared sense of reality, we certainly aren't going to be able to build up any kind of shared community or governing institutions that will allow us to get beyond this moment. So yes, 1,000%. Every time somebody is complaining about X institution isn't doing it, X leader isn't doing it, the Democratic Party is failing us, whatever it might be, I say, I'm frustrated with that too. What are we going to do about it? What is our role in this? Because these are not monolith. These are not independent actors. They respond to external stimuli and pressure the way that everything else in this world does. So what are we going to do to change things?
And that sort of reminds me of a quote, Bob, that I know you like to say often: we are the leaders that we've been waiting for, or something to that effect. Yes?
We are the leaders that we have been waiting for. Which gets, Ezra, to my last question. Ideally, today, we're going to see a lot of people in small town America, small city America, in red America, who are going to express themselves and say, we don't want tyranny. We don't want a king. How do those people, and does the national media, or even do people in Los Angeles, New York, Washington know about what's happening in small town, small city, rural, red America today?
I think it's no surprise that the local media institutions have been just eviscerated or bought up by right-wingers. And so there is actually a real difficulty in sharing that message. I will say, one of the things I have seen media particularly interested in covering is are these small scale protests in unexpected places. It's all well and good, Bob, for us to mobilize in Berkeley, and we should, don't get me wrong, but it causes you to tilt your head up and pay a little bit more attention when Homer, Alaska is protesting, or when Winnebago, Wisconsin is protesting, or when Lockhart, Texas.
I know Homer, Alaska, and I love the people in Homer, Alaska.
Oh, I've never been. I saw there's a new Indivisible group in Homer, Alaska, and so I did some research. It looks like a very cute town.
It's a fabulous town. It's a fabulous town. And in fact, there are wonderful places all over America that don't happen to be Berkeley, California, or even Northampton, Massachusetts, although I have a lot of affection for Northampton. Ezra, I don't want to take your time. You have a lot to do today. Michael, do you have any other questions?
I think my last closing question, which we can keep to whatever length answer you'd like. When you wake up on Sunday morning after No King's Day, what would you like to feel? I mean, what do you hope that the people who've been out on Saturday will feel and see?
I want a lot of people to feel that they can be part of this, and that it's necessary for them to be part of this, that they're not mere victims of world events, but they're actually participants in what happens next, and that their participation is necessary if we're going to build the kind of world we want to see. So I hope a lot of people come out and find community, and they wake up Sunday thinking, that was awesome. What do we do next?
Ezra Levin, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you've been doing. Co-chair, co-executive director of Indivisible around America, no longer invisible, but certainly indivisible. You take care, and take care of yourself also. All of you out there today, be careful, be peaceful, and try to have fun.
Thanks, guys.
Good to know that there's somebody out there like that, with an organization like that, putting on all of this, isn't it?
Well, Ezra and Leah, the co-chairs, have done a wonderful job. Indivisible is a very radical, decentralized organization. And that's important today because people on the ground not only need to feel agency and power, but also it's harder to attack them figuratively or literally when it is so decentralized, when basically there are indivisible organizations all over.
Yeah. And as we said before, we'll make sure to include links that are mentioned both in the conversation and that we talked about earlier from Indivisible, the ACLU. And I'll also mention one more, which is the GI Rights Hotline, which we'll include in the description. But if you're a member of the military, you do have rights. And there are lawyers far more experienced than I who can inform you of that if you're feeling that they may have been violated or that you have questions.
Michael, thank you.
Well, thank you, but we're not done yet. We've got a little bit more that we've got to get to. And first, I want to start with saying we've had some wonderful collaborators. And we just put out a video with former Federal Trade Commission Chair Lina Khan.
Oh, Lina Khan is terrific.
Yes.
That video really, really was wonderful. And Lina, wonderful job. Thank you for doing that. We're very, very appreciative.
And we have another video with her coming out July 2nd on monopolies. So we'll be sure to flag that as we get closer to that. And speaking of collaborators, there's one other group that we mentioned at the top, but our friends Heather Lofthouse.
I remember Heather Lofthouse.
I know, the co-host of this show, and Elliot Kirshner, the director of The Last Class, we're at DC Docs for the premiere of The Last Class yesterday. And they sent us this little clip. So let's take a look.
Sorry I'm missing the Klatch, and hello to everybody, but we are in Washington, D.C. I'm here with Elliot Kirshner.
Hello, how are you?
Who is the director of The Last Class with Robert Reich, and we are on set. It's not set.
No,
we're here at the
world premiere.
World premiere.
At DC Docs, a wonderful film festival.
So I will be back at the Klatch in a week. Hold tight, everyone. These are wild times. Bob, I miss you. I'm sorry to be out, but it's for a good cause. And everyone, you're going to be able to see this documentary soon, The Last Class. So get ready. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, I saw for the first time, I saw the movie 2 days ago. And I was a little bit nervous, to tell you the truth, Michael, that it was.
Really?
Well, look, it's about my last class. I didn't want to make it about me, or I was hoping it would not be about me.
Certainly.
But it's really about education. It's, in a sense, a love letter to the process of education, to learning, to my students. And
how many students have you taught over the years? 40,000, something like that?
over 40,000.
My goodness.
And hopefully many of them, in fact, I know many of them are doing wonderful work now. And that's, in addition to being a father, that is perhaps my most important sense of legacy.
Well, I'll add that for all of you watching, even if you weren't able to take the course at Berkeley when you were teaching it, Bob, it is available for free on this YouTube channel, or rather on your YouTube channel, and on our website, Inequality Media.
You mean what? The Wealth and Poverty
Wealth and
course.
Poverty is the name of the course, which is featured in the film, and it's a great watch. So
Thank you.
We encourage you to check it out. Lots of the lessons that you hear in these podcasts and in the explainers that you put out are there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, I appreciate it. I appreciate your participation in all of these efforts. But let me just say one thing to all of you. Today is going to be, in some senses, a difficult day, a trying day. I've talked about what you need to do and what you need not to do and about your rights. But I want to end with a thought about this point in America and our responsibility at this point. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy is slow, it is complicated, it is frustrating, but it also demands our attention and our work. And if there is any silver lining on this dark Trumpian cloud, that silver lining is that we are reminded now, perhaps more than we have been since 1968, since that terrible year, of how much work democracy requires, that we have responsibilities to one another, to the nation, that the true meaning of patriotism is to guard and protect and strengthen our democracy. So with that, good luck. Thank you all.